What is going on, everyone? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics. And yes, you read that thumbnail right. Actually bought a spec comic. Now, this might not be a normal type of spec comic. This one, a little bit more, a little pricier on the spec comic side. And to go with that, I also feel like it is a much safer comic to purchase. Not something that you're going to have like a wild swing where it's a $1 or $2 book that jumps to a $40 book or anything like that. This is a book that is well into the $1,000+ range, pretty much in any grade, and it's just one that I thought was a cool book to have an opportunity to own. This one I especially liked. I think it has the potential to maybe even bump up in grade, so that's something I'm going to be looking into. And hey, if everything works out in the movies, maybe it even goes up in value a little bit. But in addition to that, just because it's only one book, I've also got a number of books that I sold this weekend. I thought it was a pretty eclectic mix, a pretty interesting book, so I thought I would just show those as well after we talk about this book here. So, what book did I end up picking up as kind of a speculative purchase? It's one that I have never owned before. It's one that whenever I see it come up for sale, it is always a kind of like a really low grade, like 3.0 or lower. And this one's actually a little bit nicer than that. That's one thing that really sold me on it. Also, just based on the grader's notes and just the kind of the general appeal of the book, I feel like it was undergraded a bit. I do think that even without doing anything to it, feel like this grade, bit of a jerk grade on this one. I think solid 5.5, maybe even a 6 on this book. This one is a 5.0. So what book is this? This is Action Comics number 252. So this is the first appearance of Supergirl, and as we know, she is supposed to be potentially making an appearance in the Superman movie. We're gonna maybe have an entirely like new movie or something related to her that would be coming out in the future. And so I think that this is a in terms of safe speculation on a book, just because of what this book already is, felt like this was a pretty good pickup. So I picked this one up from Flip Mode Comics. If you're not familiar with them, they sell on Instagram. And so I bought this book from them. And when I saw this one, there were a couple things that really sold me on this copy. One is that the colors are fantastic on it. This is a book that you will very often, I'm trying to keep the reflection off of it, you will very often see the blues especially really get faded. I mean, this is a pretty old Silver Age book. I mean, this is 1959. So it's Silver Age, but it's early Silver Age. It's pre-Fantastic Four #1. And so in terms of DC Silver Age keys, it's pretty early on. But the colors on this one really, really popped. Like you'll often see that this kind of like purplish pink in the background gets faded, and the blue definitely gets faded. So that was one thing I really liked about it. The other thing was I just felt it looked really nice for the grade. And this is one of those books that as you move up just half a grade, it adds a lot of value in the book. Like it's one of those where it might really be worth it just to, try to send it back in to try to get a 5.5 or maybe a 6. This is a book that a 9.2 is the highest grade on Census. A 9.0 just sold for like 48,000. The 9.2 sold about a year ago for a little over 50,000. And so this is one that mid grades, even like this, they even don't come up for sale all that often. Usually, like I said, what I normally see are kind of like the lower grades, 3.0s, 2.0s, 1.5s, that kind of thing. This one's really solid presenting. So the main flaws on this book, on the back cover, you can see there's a little stain on the bottom down here and some pen. And then on this edge over here, there's a very small tear right here. And I mean, outside of like your standard stuff that you're going to see, like a little bit of spine wear and edge wear and all of that. And those things are called out in the grader's notes. I mean, otherwise, it is a really nice book. I mean, when I looked at it, and and like I said, there's spine ticks. Like we get close in, on the spine, like you can see there's wear on the book. I'm not saying it's like a 9.8 or something like that, but I was saying if I submitted this book and this one came back to me as a 5.0, I'd be pretty annoyed about it. Like I felt like a 5.5 is like kind of being like a jerk grade, and a 6.0 seems fairly reasonable for this one. I mean, it's like a small stain, a little tear, and a little bit of pen on the back, but I mean, just a stunning copy. And so I don't know. I think this is one that's going to be really potentially worth trying to crack, press, resubmit, and even though I don't really think pressing is going to do much with the book, usually if you're going to crack a book out that's been in the slab for a little while, and you want it to get it regraded, just pay a little bit of money to get it pressed, and so that it's in its best possible, presentation when you send it in. I just don't see this as a 5.0 book. I think it's too nice. But yeah, so this was my spec pickup. First appearance of Supergirl, really nice presenting copy. Happy to have picked this one up. So then moving on, what books did I sell this weekend? And I just, because it was such a unique mix, I thought it would be interesting to show these. And because it's books that came from the collection that I just bought, that I made the video about, as well as the Golden Age collection that I bought last year, and then just some other books that I've picked up, throughout the years that sold as well. So the first two, I'll start with one. From that Golden Age collection was Bozo the Clown #2. And so this is one of those that I like to talk about with respect to why I like the kind of like the Golden Age type collections, like those older collections. And it's because you have a book like this that is it's kind of like a relatively obscure book, not a huge dollar book, but this book is still sold for, I think, like $13. So when you have kind of like a run fill type Golden Age book, it might take a little longer to sell, but run fill in like the bronze, copper, it's like $1 or $2. But going back into the Golden Age, Bozo the Clown #2, it's a $13 book. Similarly, I sold this copy of Big Shot #85. And I think this one sold for around $21. So, same vein, it's like kind of like a run filler type book from the Big Shot run. Is still a book that carries a decent amount of value, like between these two books, like about $35 plus shipping. And you add that up over, 100, 200, and in this case of this collection, it was like, I remember, like 600 or 700 books. It really adds up. So that's one of the things I really do like about the Golden Age type collections, is that there's just a lot more built-in value. It does take longer to potentially sell those books, but when they do, you get, more value than you get for like run filler Avengers from 1980 or 1990. So the next book, this is one that I picked up in a lot from Instagram, and this is Mad Magazine #30. Now, this is a private sale, so when those other ones I sold on eBay, so I'll talk about prices because you can see them if you just go to eBay. You can see the sold price. This is a private sale, so I don't talk about private sale prices. But this is the first cover appearance of Alfred E. Newman, and so that's what makes this book a key. A bunch of these issues around this time, starting around issue like 24 or 23 or so, have this kind of like this cool border around the outside edge. It just makes them all look pretty interesting. But this is Mad Magazine #30, and so actually one of the Mad Magazine keys being that first cover appearance of Alfred E. Newman. Then the next book here, this is actually one of the books that I picked up just this last weekend in that collection, and this was not really a comic, but it's like a graphic novel, or you call it like a trade paperback. I think I'd call it a graphic novel, but The Death of Gru. And so this sold for $13.50 plus shipping, so like $20 shipped. And so that's just one of those things, like everything. Like I did have some comments in that video where people would say like, oh, it's really hard to sell some of that stuff and that kind of thing. And it's like everything generally has some value. You just have to find the person that's interested in it. And one of the really interesting things that I found with the Gru books is that those sold almost instantly. And I had multiple people reach out about them. And so you never really know what's going to be of interest to people out there. And I sold they're already packaged up, so I can't show them here, but I sold all the Gru books and all the Count Duckula books and all the Marvel Tales books. So all of those sold within, a day. And it was, so you never know what's necessarily going to be the thing that interests someone. And those were books that sold very, very quickly. And so all the Gru books are officially now gone. This one plus all the actual, like comics have already sold. So Gru was very popular from that collection, which I thought was really interesting. Now moving on to some slabs. So first off here, we've got a pre-code horror book. I think a pretty cool pre-code horror cover. I really like this one. This is Ghost Comics number 4. And so if you're not familiar with the Ghost Comics run, this is basically, all the covers are pretty much good girl art mixed with pre-code horror. So if you're familiar with Planet Comics, those are almost all good girl art mixed with sci-fi. This is the equivalent for pre-code horror. Almost all the covers, if not all the covers, are done by Maurice Whitman. He's one of the people, I do really like his style. He did a number of the later Planet Comics covers as well. He usually has these kind of like bright colors like this. I think he has just a really detailed, clean, style. And so Ghost Comics number 4. This was a public sale. This was on eBay. So this one sold for $1,000. So one of the more desirable covers from the Ghost Comics run. Then the next one, this is one that I actually got graded myself a while ago, because I haven't sent anything for grading for over a year now. But this is Werewolf by Night number 11. And this is the first appearance of the Hangman. And really nice grade book. I picked this one up raw off of an Instagram claim sale, decided it looked, really nice condition, and I would get it graded. So came back 9.4 white pages, sold for $225. So Werewolf by Night number 11, first appearance of the Hangman, and they do actually, they notate that on the label as well. Then the last book, because obviously I can't show the, all the Gru books and the Marvel Tales books and the Count Duckula books, because those are already packaged up. But those ones did sell as well. This is actually the biggest book. This one was also a private sale, so I can't give I'm not going to give the actual sales number on it. But really cool book. Was one of my keeper books for a while. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 3, 9.6. Now, the cool thing about this one, there's 2 different things. Well, I'll say 3 different things, because it's got 2 signatures that are on the interior. That's why it still has the blue label. They're on the interior. You could actually get this one JSA'd now. So if you send it in, you could get that gold label with the black, because they do magazine-sized books now. So you can see up there, it is signed by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird on the interior. Peter Laird's signatures are always tougher to come by. Just doesn't really sign anything anymore. But the big thing here is this is the variant edition. So if you are not familiar with issue number 3, there are 2 versions of the first print. I'm sure there are multiple other prints that are done, but there are 2 versions of the first print. The first books that were printed, you can see here, if you compare this to a standard copy, it's very white. There's a lot of white on the cover, and it's actually kind of like a deeper blue. The one that came later has a lot of this, like, more of a greenish tone or an aqua tone to it. You really can tell the difference when you see them. That's why it's often called I think they call it like the white photo variant. And so it's because of this, like, Laird's photo in the back there is all white, but it's actually most of the cover. It's all this stuff that's white is not white on the standard first print of this book. And so this one is much less common. There are officially, I believe there are 400 copies that they said were printed, but I did a video a while back where I talked with someone who actually very close relationship with Kevin Eastman, and he's considered the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan, and Kevin Eastman sent him, I believe, 3 copies of this book, and they were this version. And in his letter that he sent to him, he said they only printed 300 of the initial print. And so the reality is, we really think there are only 300 of the initial print. The 400 number came years later, where somebody, it feels like, was like referencing back and trying to remember, but that letter that was written to him said 300. And so I think there are actually 100 less of this book out there in this version than is largely thought. But variant 9.6, beautiful copy of this book, signed by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. And so that was the last book that I sold this weekend. So that's a really cool one. Like I said, was one of my PC books for a while, but it fell off the list maybe like a year ago or so. But that's everything. Those are the books I sold. The one book that I picked up, my spec book, Action Comics 252, First Appearance of Supergirl. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell, and I will see you on the next one.